This is Mrekk, the rank 1 player in the rhythm game Osu. And this is Zoink, the rank 1 player in the rhythm-based platformer called Geometry Dash. Although being two different players from two entirely different games, they both have a lot of similarities between each other. Both players have been at the number 1 spot for the most amount of time out of any player in both games. Both have actually lost their spot for a short amount of time and then regained it once again. And both are regarded as the greatest player of all time for each game. But have you ever wondered who is actually more dominant? Mrekk in Osu or Zoink in Geometry Dash? In this video we will be comparing both players under certain criteria and we will decide who is actually more dominant. Now before we actually start with the comparison, I do want to clarify that everything in this video in terms of comparison will be completely unbiased and we will be only looking at the facts. And if you disagree with some of the points here mentioned, then feel free to comment your opinion about it. And also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. I make both Osu and Geometry Dash news content. But let's get started with our first category, which will simply look at who has been longer at the number 1 spot. Zoink in Geometry Dash took the number 1 spot from Space UK around January of 2023, and he would have been technically number 1 a few months earlier if it wasn't for the you-know-what incident. He would hold the number 1 spot up until June 12th of 2024, where Trick, at the time the number 2 player on the point to grade leaderboards, would release a new video called I Am the Bounty Hunter. He would showcase in the video that he has been secretly grinding extreme demons to simply overtake Zoink, which he successfully did after the point to grade leaderboard updated, and was battling Zoink for holding that position up until September of 2024, when Zoink would finally beat Trick and grab back his number 1 position. And ever since then he has held the number 1 spot without anyone interfering, which means that Zoink has been at the number 1 position for 34 months, or roughly translated to 2 years and 8 months. But what about Mrekk? Well, this is where things get interesting. Mrekk took the rank 1 position in Osu on April 8th of 2021, overtaking Whitecat after his year-and-a-half dominance. Mrekk would hold that number 1 position up until July of 2024, when Mrekk would lose the number 1 position to Akolibet. Akolibet would manage to hold the number 1 position for a staggering 12 days after a heated battle with Mrekk, but Mrekk managed to come through at the end, getting back his number 1 position on August 3rd of 2024. And ever since then, Mrekk has held the number 1 position with little to no competition at all, which means that Mrekk has been at the number 1 position for 56 months, or in translation, roughly 4.5 years. So when it comes to time spent at the number 1 position, Mrekk takes the cake with the first point of this video. Now our next point is going to be about something that happened to both players, which is from losing the number 1 position, how long did it took them to get back to the number 1 position? Now like we previously mentioned, Zoink would take around 3 months to take the number 1 position from Trick, and Mrekk would take around less than 2 weeks to get the number 1 position from Akolibet. Now some may say that it takes a lot more time to grind Geometry Dash levels compared to, you know, just grinding Osu, since for Geometry Dash it's mainly memory, while for Osu you can sight read levels. But even if you take that into consideration, let's say 1 week of Osu grinding is the equivalent of 1 month to Geometry Dash grinding, then Mrekk would still take less time than, you know, what Zoink took to get the number 1 position back, since Zoink took around 2.5 months for him to get back to the number 1 position. So this point would definitely go to Mrekk once again. Now our next category is going to be interesting because we're going to compare the competition that Mrekk has had for PP records compared to the competition that Zoink has had for getting top 1s. Now when it comes to PP records for Osu, he has had many competitors. Just to name a few, we have Eterna, who managed to get the PP record on Ascension to Heaven, Akolibet that managed to get back-to-back PP records, first one getting the 1500 PP play on Valley of the Damned, and then a few weeks later getting the 1700 PP record on Sidetrack Day. Afterwards we have Ivaxar, who managed to get the PP record on The Violation, and as a recent, which is also the current PP record, is Torum Ivana, who managed to get the PP record on Humiliation Supreme, and it's to this day the PP record. Mrekk has had to battle them multiple times to get the new PP record in the game, which he has done multiple times, and we're still waiting for him to get the new one potentially. So when it comes to competition and PP record, Mrekk has a lot of them. But what about top 1 verifications in Geometry Dash, and does Zoink have a lot of competitors in that? Well, over the past few years that he has been dominant, not many people have actually challenged him for a top 1 verification. For example, out of the last 5 top 1 levels that we've had in Geometry Dash, only one of them has been verified by someone else, which is W Popoff with Amethyst. But the thing is, Amethyst was verified a little after Thinking Space 2 was verified, and because Amethyst got rated way faster than Thinking Space 2, some people sometimes sometimes don't consider Amethyst as a top 1 since, again, Thinking Space 2 was verified before that, but that still doesn't change the fact that the recent top 1s have been essentially all verified from Zoink. So when it comes to that, I will give Zoink this point because it does seem that he's pushing the game's limits to the absolute max compared to other players in the game. But what about the difference in points between the number 1 and the number 2 position? You know, to truly see the difference in skill. Well, at the moment on the individual stats viewer, Zoink is 2,625 points above the number 2 spot, which is W Pop-Off. And as it stands right now, this probably won't change anytime soon, since that is a lot of points. Pop-Off will have to grind a ton to even get near Zoink, and that is only if he grinds for, let's say, the next 2 or 3 months. When it comes to Osu and Mrekk though, Mrekk as it stands at the moment is less than 2,000 PP above the second position, which is Ivana. But the reason why Ivana even managed to get this close to Mrekk was because Mrekk wasn't grinding the game at all. He was even stating that he would give the number 1 position to someone else simply for him to have a bit more fun with the game, since he has been at that spot for many years now. And in those many years, the gap between the number 1 and the number 2 spot have been humongous. For example, in January of 2023, the gap in PP between the number 1 and the number 2 positions was more than 3,100 PP, or maybe even more. And even recently, around September of 2025, the gap was once again more than 30,000 performance points. And the reason for it now to be around 2,000 PP was simply because Mrekk started playing the game again and had an insane pop-up session. It only took him a week to enlarge the gap again, from it being less than 500 PP to it now being close to 2,000 PP. So yeah, I think this point will definitely go to Mrekk once again. So if we count all points, then the score would be 3-1 for Mrekk, which means that the more dominant player in their retrospective game would be Mrekk in Osu compared to Zoink in Geometry Dash. Now again, I tried to go off of facts and everything and a bit of a realistic approach. Again, it is very hard to compare both players because again, there are 2 different games with 2 different scoring systems, which again, I encourage you, if you think that some of the stuff that I said in this video is false or just incorrect in your opinion, then mention it down below. I may pin the comment or just give you a heart on it or something like that. Also, if you're a Geometry Dash player and you happen to have heard of Osu for the first time, give it a try. It's free, you can download it for yourself. And same goes for the Osu players. Try Geometry Dash, buy it off of Steam. It's pretty cheap and it's really fun as well. Surprisingly, both communities have a lot of similarities, both good and bad, and both games are also really fun to play, so why not give it a shot? As for me, I've been Stu. Thank you so much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed. Be sure to subscribe if you want to stay updated with the latest news that happens in both communities, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.